behind. But our help we spread it far and wide. Some are hurting so bad on the inside. Don't even got no strength to cry. When parents suffer means the children suffer. Hurts to see grown men cry. That's why you know the things that you did for me, I'll do it for them. I'll do it for them. See the love that you shared with me, I shared with them. I shared with them, yeah. The gifts that you give to me, I will give it to them. I'll give it to them. See the love that you shared with me, yeah. I share the love with all that's in me, yeah. And I will love unconditionally. My kind of love for you is everlasting, everlasting. Never wanna lose my joy, no. Because the things that you did for me, I'll do it for them. I'll do it for them. See the love that you shared with me, I'll share it with them. I share it with them, yeah. The gifts that you give to me, I'll give it to them. I'll give it to them, yeah. See the love that you shared with me, I'll share it with them, yeah. Yes, I share it with my own people. My own people. Share it with my own people. Share it with my own people. You know I share it with my own people. See my own people. Yeah, yeah.
That's all I'm thinking of.
But the greatest of this all, it's love. I really love you, faith, hope, and love.
That's all I'm thinking of, girl.
The greatest of this all, it's love. Oh, come on, let's hold a meditation. Reason about Christ and His great plan. Preparing our home in a mansion. Come along and let us go, man, and you will see the pearly gates, streets of gold, living in a place where we'll never grow old. These are the promises already foretold, fulfilling faith, hope, and love. That's all I'm thinking of. But the greatest of this all, it's love. I really love you, faith, hope, and love, yeah. It's what I'm thinking of, yes. But the greatest of this all, it's love. Hey, are you prepared for this life ahead? Or wasting your time on what's here? Is your stomach full with the right food? Have you eaten from the everlasting bread of life? Have you drunk of the living water? Or seeking in this life to prosper? But are you satisfied with the life you're living now? Talking about faith, hope, and love.
That's all I'm thinking of.
But the greatest of this all, it's love. I really love you, faith, hope, and love. It's what I'm thinking of, yeah. But the greatest of this all, yes, it's love. Hey, and faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And hope is the desire to be fulfilled. It's a feeling that is deep within. Yeah. And love is a word not easy to explain. It's an action word that has made much pain. If you still don't know that God is love. So faith, hope, and love. Talking about faith, hope, and love. But the greatest greatest of this all. It's love. Really love you, faith, hope, and love. It's what I'm thinking of, yeah. For the greatest of this all, yes. It's love. Your love, faith, hope, and love.
What I'm thinking of, yeah.
For the greatest of this all, yes. It's love. And if you know not love, then you know not God, for God is love. If you know not love, if you know not love, you know not God. Faith, hope, and love.
What I'm thinking of, yeah.
But the greatest of this all, yes, it's love. Greetings, everyone. Good afternoon, wherever you are. And welcome to another episode of Music Mind. Today, this Sunday. My name is Shem Meluce, and
I am Shakina Meluce. And today we are going to be discussing consequences.
yes, the topic for today is consequences. Consequences. Okay.
Consequences. Well, I think most people would have an understanding of what consequences are. Although generally when we hear the term consequences, we think more on a negative, more on a negative vibe. So when people hear consequence, their mind automatically think, okay, a negative repercussion. And
Yes.
so that is generally what consequences is
Yeah.
seen as.
Yeah, one person's look at it. So just before we begin, we just want to look into the chat as always, and I just want to say welcome to everyone who's there, and it's a blessing to have SF Rose. Nice, thanks for coming. One Drop, greetings, my brother. Thank you for coming. Soraya, thank you for coming. And I know there are a few other persons who have not spoken in the chat, but they are watching, and we just want to say thanks for coming. Welcome. I also know, I just want to say before I begin, today is my niece's birthday.
Oh yes.
So I want to say happy birthday to you, Erin. I want to say it correctly because she's Scottish. So Erin. I want to
Hi.
say happy birthday from Uncle. Hope you're having a great day. Maybe Auntie will say happy birthday. So enjoy.
I sent birthday greetings through her mom, but I just want to say happy birthday to you, Erin. And you are growing so fast. I didn't realize you would be so old. But anyways, thank you so much for everyone who's joined us. I just want to say hi to Syria Lafay. It's nice to
Yes.
have you here. And everyone else who has been with us frequently, regularly, always coming to support what we are doing. So today, like we said, we're talking about consequences.
Yes.
And I just want to start off by saying functional sociologists or functionalists, they claim that every aspect of society exists today, every aspect that exists today is vital for that society's survival. And this means that everything in society, whether it is good or bad, is important for that society to thrive. And this is the perspective of functionalists within society. There are functionalists, there are Marxists, so there are several perspectives, but this sociological perspective claims that everything, whether it is good or bad, is necessary for our society to function. So today we talk consequences, and if we are to examine consequences from a functionalist perspective, it would mean that one would claim a bad consequence is just as vital as a good consequence. But first, we're going to examine what exactly consequences are.
Yeah, so we're talking about consequences today. Welcome, Angela M. Thank you for coming. It's a pleasure. It's a blessing having you here. So yes, we're talking about consequences, and as we said previously, consequences are generally bent to the negative side. So we keep saying that every action has a consequence, whether it's good or whether it's bad. But I believe that consequence is a neutral word, and by that I am saying that it is the repercussion of anything. Now, I'm not going into any dictionary to give my meaning. I'm just sitting here and I'm defining consequence as something, as the outcome of whatever action or whatever situation that you're in. So whether it's good, I hit this desk, there is a sound that comes out of it. This is the consequence of me knocking that. I am hungry, I eat food. The consequence of that is my stomach is filled. So basically it is the end result of an action or behavior or something like that. So if you may want to give a scientific meaning or a dictionary meaning, something that persons could go online and actually see and say, oh yes, this is consequence, you may do so.
Well, I like to generate my own meanings of terms, especially from where I come from. Some persons might view things a bit differently from me, and that is fine. But before we started off, I decided to just type down what I thought consequences meant. So I'm going to read this time, and this is what I had here. Consequence is a neutral term. I think you highlighted that, and I'm agreeing with that here. It is neither good nor bad in and of itself. In life, everything we do, every action taken results in an equal reaction. For example, if one shuts his eyes, it is likely that the person will not see anything that is right before them. Similarly, if one rings a bell, the likelihood for a loud ringing sound to emerge is almost 100%. Thus, one can say that a consequence is a natural response or reaction to an action. So this is what I typed down as my definition or my understanding of what a consequence is.
Okay, so we are talking about consequences. And so if you're just coming in, we are talking about consequences. Now, like we said, we keep saying, feel free to speak in the chat, give your opinion. We don't propose to know it all. And if you feel free, you have my number, you want to send a voice note so we can answer your questions in whatever way, we will do that as well. So the topic for today is consequence. And we start by giving the meaning, and we have a scientific meaning here. And I also propose my meaning, which is similar in explanation. So it is a neutral word. Basically, it's very neutral in its expression. But really and truly, it is neither good nor bad. So again, we confirm neutral, and it's the outcome of whatever action that one would have committed. So we also recognize that with consequence, there are various kinds, different types of consequences, like natural consequences and unnatural consequences, or unexpected and different things. That we want to go and we want to talk about natural consequences, and that would be consequences that we anticipate. We expect that if we do that, this will be the result.
So if you play with fire, the likelihood is for you to get burnt. So that is a natural consequence. Everyone expects that this is what is going to happen.
When you see smoke, there should be fire.
There should be fire. So there must, the smoke would be a consequence of fire or something burning.
Absolutely.
So that is a natural consequence. And I think we experience natural consequences on a daily basis. True. Everything we do, like I speak and you would hear my voice. That is a natural consequence.
There are persons who do all the actions,
but you would not hear and there is a reason for that. So there is always a response when an action, when there is an action. So there is
Right.
always something that happens, something that is a natural result of an action.
Right. Okay, so we're talking about natural consequences. And maybe we need to examples that persons could relate to and just realize for true, this is a natural example. So for example, it's cold. I know it's getting cold in the US and in the UK. If you refuse to wear your jackets or 4 layers or 3 layers or 2 layers, if you have that strong immune system, your body heat is high, you will feel the consequence of the cold.
Yes, you will feel cold.
Which is the consequence. Yes. So those are some of the reasons. You don't pay your phone bill. The natural consequence of that would be
you get cut off.
all right. So this is one thing. Want to say hi to Catherine. It's a pleasure having you there. Thanks for coming. Mm-hmm. So yes, we want to move along and we want to talk more because we're going to be getting deeper into these things. Or if you have some explanation that you want to give as it pertains to natural or anticipated expectations or consequences.
Well, I think we've covered that quite clearly. A natural consequence is something that just happens naturally. This is something that we anticipate. It is something whether or not, it doesn't matter who does it, the response will be the same. It is a natural consequence, it is an expected consequence. Something will happen and we already can foretell what that thing is. That is a natural consequence.
Now, if we talk about the natural consequence, we already know or we anticipate this will be the end result.
Right.
And we are sometimes glad that we could do those things. Parents love to do those things. Child, don't do that. I have been there before you. It will happen. If you go there, that will happen. Mm-hmm. If you do this, that will happen. So let's move into something else where we talk about the unexpected consequence. Mm-hmm. What does that entail? How is it different from the natural or expected consequence?
Well, let me just say that the unexpected consequence it does not necessarily mean that it is unnatural, but it is so described because it is not something that we expect. So, for example, you proceed to do something, and you have it at the back of your mind that this is what the consequence will be. So maybe you decide that you're going to go to a party and you're going to enjoy that because your friends are there. You expect your friends to be there, they have always been there. And so you go on to that party and then you don't enjoy yourself because your friends or your favorite friend did not show up. That is a natural consequence. There is nothing that you could have done to probably change that. However, it is an unexpected consequence. It is something that you did not expect or you did not anticipate. And we're going to go into more realistic examples, but an unexpected consequence is a consequence of an action, a purposeful action that you did not anticipate.
So if you're just tuning in, so it's an action that you did not anticipate. So if you're just tuning in, we want to let you know that today we are speaking about consequences. Now we've just entered, we're talking about consequences. I gave a little meaning that is of my heart, that is of me, and I said it's something natural.
Yes.
And basically it is the result of something that you'd have done, maybe an action, brings a reaction. Mm-hmm. So a better way to say that would be my meaning. You went into something more scientific where you even gave examples and you said, for example, if one shuts their eye, it's almost natural that you won't see anything. You speaking, there's almost an expectation for persons to hear what you're saying. If you hit a bell, it's expected that there'll be a result of a sound. Right. So we went on to explain that, and we are saying that there are different kinds of consequences, starting with natural consequences, where one expects the outcome that they get, right?
Yes.
So I should expect it to be sweet,
Right.
hoping it's not salt at all. So it's sweet. So this is natural, anticipated or expected consequence.
Right.
So we're using consequence in a way that is not normally used, because remember, consequences are normally used in a negative sense.
It generally has a negative connotation.
Definitely. So it's like, but consequences, basically, if I should add to my meaning, would be like a payment, a wage. You know, let's say we do some synonyms right there. So the consequence of your action, the wage of your action. So maybe in a certain extent, yeah.
So you work, you get paid.
All right. So definitely. So we could use it like that. So we have the other one, which is the unexpected consequence, and we are saying that it does not necessarily. It just is something that we had an expectation at the back of our mind. Like you gave the example, going to a party, and then because your friend was not there, you just lose the whole vibe.
Yeah.
You know. So yes, if you're just tuning in, this is where we at as we talk about consequences. So we will go in deeper with this thing. We will talk about how it is applied in our daily lives, how it affects a lot of the decisions that we make and take, and consequences as it pertains to our church life.
Right.
So yes, what are the causes? Because we recognize that unexpected consequences are the problem makers.
Yes.
We don't have an issue really. We don't have an issue really with natural consequences or good consequences. Because that's what the meaning, the word talks about, natural. But really, we want to say it differently. As I'm looking at it there, I'm thinking good outcomes versus bad outcomes. So that would be a better way to say. So we don't necessarily have an issue with the good outcomes, but we have an issue with what we would see as negative outcomes or consequences as it is typically used in our society. So we ask the question, what causes unexpected or harsh consequences?
Okay, so I think there are several causes of unexpected consequences. One of the examples is ignorance, and I remember we were discussing at one point that a relative went up to the US, and he was not aware that the bus, you had to pay for the bus. So he was under the impression that the bus was free, so you just bought the bus and go on and get out, and that was the notion that he had. And later on, when we discussed that, he understood that even in his ignorance, he could have ended up paying a fine or probably ended up in jail. And so that, if that was what had happened, that would have been a negative consequence that was unanticipated and that was caused as a result of his ignorance.
So permit me to just add to this. Beautifully said. This exact situation happened to another friend of mine. So this one was a family member who got free. So that was good. He never got caught. But here's one that happened to a friend of mine. It was the same scenario, same bus system. He came up today, saw people boarding the bus, he got on the bus. It's called a select bus. You know, the select bus is a bus that you buy a ticket from the machine, but you could just get on, and sometimes you have a good trip, but no inspector really check on you, and then you're safe. But should in case one checks you out, that's where the fine comes in. And that happened to my friend, and by the following day he was in court. He was in court being charged because of his innocence. So this is a typical example of the same situation, but it went on to the full extent of someone paying the price for something that they were unaware of, and that is the point of ignorance.
Right. So ignorance does not deter you from the consequence that is inevitable. If you are ignorant of a law, and you act with that ignorance, that does not mean, since you're ignorant of this particular law, the officers will not charge you because you're ignorant of the law. So that does not mean anything, and that is one of the reasons why we have situations where unexpected consequences emerge. Okay. Another example is our short-term pleasures or interests. So we feel we want something now. We get it for the now. We don't think long term, and so there is a consequence that emerges because we never thought of the long term. And I don't want to pick on young people because I think older people do it as well. But but it is generally seen as a young person's thing. So I'm going to reference young people in that sense. So a young person, they're in adolescent stage, all their hormones are raging and all of those things, and so they decide there is this young lady that he sees, this young man sees a young lady, he really desires for that lady, and he does not think that there is something beyond just sleeping with that lady and fulfilling his sexual desires. And so he sleeps with her and she becomes pregnant. His expectation, his anticipated consequence was just for satisfying that pleasure, that desire now. But then there was an unexpected or unintended consequence, which was the child. So the pregnancy. And so we have our short-term interest or desires or pleasures that cause us to be in positions where unexpected consequences emerge.
So we're looking at it, unexpected consequences, and we are saying that consequences are generally ironed out or presented as negative. And so we are looking at the unexpected consequences of one's action. And we gave an example of going into a bus innocently, and we said ignorance is one of the things that has done that. Another thing would be probably our value system. When you look at our value system, and I want to say that being a Christian myself, there are certain things that we live by. There are certain morals, there are certain standards
yes,
that we live by. And it keeps us from going forward and doing certain things. I have met persons, because the US is a nice example that I could use. There are certain things, certain benefits that you could get by just basic actions, but your values guides and avoid certain consequences. So you probably need a green card, right? How does that affect you? How does that affect an unexpected consequence? Maybe you just need to get married and change your consequence, change your situation, and you just cannot seem to do that. But you are there in a way that you are not totally free. That is still a consequence of you being there.
Yes, so basically you're saying that for in that sense your morals or your values influence or cause an unexpected consequence in certain situations.
Yes, definitely it does that.
So for example, if I know there are certain people who may be in the US and they're not fully legal, they're there, but they're not fully legal, but then they have an opportunity to maybe get married, and so they choose not to get married because they believe I should be getting married within a Christian, it has to be, you have to be equally yoked, as they say, or it has to follow a particular structure, you have to fall in love, that kind of thing. And so they choose not to, if the situation presents itself, not to marry this individual who's offering himself just for you to remain, because I mean, you've already gone there, you've already overstayed, you're already in a position where it is not legal.
Yeah.
And so that we could question whether or not that is a moral thing to do, but then we'll not go there. But this situation can cause you to never end up marrying, and so your moral system cause an unexpected consequence. You probably thought maybe when you got there it would be all roses, and so you might have ended up in marriage, but it never ended like that because of your moral system.
Now, even though we speak about consequences, we want to add consequences, and we want to add something to this, as in purpose. Consequences and purpose. I also want to say something as it relates to that situation of green card and all of that kind of thing. Someone who would probably want to have a child, right? You want to have a child, but again still has this value system which guides you. And you're getting older, you have not gotten married yet, you have not done any of those things. And you're saying, how could I do this? Could it be that? So are we saying that your mentality, your mindset contributes to how you see things and automatically bring about a certain reaction or consequence? All right, so if you're just tuning in, welcome Delta, thanks for coming. We are talking about consequences of one's action or lack of action or whatever it is, and we say that consequences are natural. There is no well, maybe there's wrong or right, but they are natural, and they are natural consequences. They are unexpected consequences. And we have those that are anticipated as well. And with those that are unexpected, we know they are ignorance. It's based on ignorance, and that does not mean that ignorance there is not negative. It's innocent.
Well, ignorance, again, ignorance is a very neutral term. Ignorance
Yes.
just means a lack of knowledge on a particular subject. It does not mean that you do not know anything at all, or it is a negative term. So that cleared.
All right, so beautiful. Now we're going to be taking this thing where we really want it to go. We want to be going and delving deep into scripture and how we can go and deal with consequences and see the benefit of consequences. So we ask the question, what are some of the types of unexpected consequences? And I will say one of the things there. I will give something here. There is something that happens to us a lot. In this world that we live in, I don't know if it's the food that we eat or the lack of exercise and all of those things. You have persons taking tablets. So you take a tablet maybe for high blood pressure, but it has side effects. So some of those things are really unexpected occurrences that happen in your body, and then you now wonder what is taking place. So you take something for this and you get an unexpected consequence. So this is the type. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about it, and I will bring it to the Bible now because we have a few of those situations. But before that, let me know if you have anything to say as it relates to types of unexpected consequences.
Well, I think unexpected consequences, if we have to generalize, it could fall into basically two categories. So there could be positive unexpected consequences and negative unexpected consequences. Basically, what I'm saying is sometimes things happen that we do not anticipate. We behave in a particular way, and there are consequences that emerge that we do not anticipate. These consequences can fall into two categories. even though it is unexpected or unanticipated, it can also be something bad. So we will put it as positive unexpected consequences and negative unexpected consequences.
Okay, so what would be as we speak about, let's just talk about positive consequences. That's it, right?
Positive unexpected.
Unexpected, yeah.
Let me see if I could get an example of a positive unexpected consequence. So okay, let's say since we're talking from, we want to draw into the more spiritual aspect of it, we're going to use Christianity. So within Christianity there is this belief that you're not supposed to have a child out of wedlock. And so for that reason you should not be engaging anyone sexually if that person is not your marital partner. So if that person is not your wife or your husband. But say for example an individual does engage in sexual activity outside of wedlock and a child emerges. So this is an unexpected consequence because you're not expecting, you're just there for the pleasure of it. Since you do not want someone to see you as the sinner, you tend now to just do it for the pleasure of it. So you don't expect the child to come out. But so that child comes out, and this child can become a positive unexpected consequence. So for example, this child grows up, whatever the situation is between you getting pregnant and the child growing up and becoming whatever it is that they become, that does not matter. But then that child becomes, say, a lawyer or a doctor or someone of prestige, let's say the next president of the United States, you would feel proud. And so that is an example of a positive unexpected consequence.
Beautiful. So we are saying while there are consequences that are negative, we have consequences that are positive. And I think we could think of a lot more as it relates to that. And we think about situations where we just cannot see the end. We cannot see the end, but the results are wonderful, wonderful. Now, we will talk a little bit, let's talk a little bit about an example of a negative, just so we could get them together and then talk about all of them at the same time.
Okay, a negative unexpected consequence. Let me think of a negative unexpected consequence. Okay, so say for example this you're a teenager and your mother says, do not venture out. Do not go to that party, I'm warning you. Okay, so you have agreed that you're not going, you sneak out through the window, you dress up, and then you go out, you meet your friends. On the way from the party, you have gone and enjoyed yourself and done everything. Everybody has gone home. Your friends invited you, but they have gone home, they're safe and whatnot. But you, on your way back, you end up being raped. God forbid. So this is the situation. In that rape experience, you end up contracting let's say HIV and AIDS. That in itself would be a negative, unexpected consequence. You did not expect for you to get raped. You did not. That was not something that you expected. So that in itself is negative, and to further cause damage, you got an STD that is almost uncurable, and so that would be an example of a negative, unexpected consequence.
Okay, so wonderful. So I have a scripture here that I will bring, and we will reason about it. So Galatians 6:7-8 says, do not be deceived. God is not mocked, for whatsoever one sows, that will he also reap. For the one who sows to his own flesh will from the flesh reap corruption, but the one who sows to the Spirit will from the Spirit reap eternal life. So basically this is talking about the consequences of sin. And if we analyze that, where is that going? Is this negative or positive? So let's break down the first part. Do not be deceived. Don't fool yourself. God is not mocked. Whatsoever one soweth, that will he also reap. And then they give the example, for if one sows to his own flesh, he will reap corruption. And so it's basically saying that the same meaning that we gave, there is to every action a reaction. So we spoke about sex, the tendency or the likelihood is that one will get pregnant, unless if you're lucky on a safe day and all of those things. But the likelihood is that this will be the outcome. Now, when you talk to spirituality and as it pertains to the Bible, it puts consequences and sin together. It groups them together. So when it speaks of consequence, there is always sin at the end of it. And so if one, but the one who sows to the Spirit, so the one who seeks God, the one who seeks the things of God will inherit godly things or spiritual things. So this is cautioning us and basically admonishing us and saying, listen, you always have to be mindful, you always have to be aware, because whatever you do, or how you do what you do, will bring about a result. But what is the result that you want? Is it the expected result? Because when we speak of unexpected result, it could come out positive. For example, you gave what you said earlier. One may get pregnant, and we seem to be using sex a lot, but one may get pregnant, and the child may turn out to be a very good child that would develop into a moral individual, be able to care for the mom and do all of that. Even in situations of rape, you have persons who have gotten raped, and then they decide not to terminate the child, but have everything go as planned, and this child turned out to be a remarkable child and contribute very positively into society. But there is also the flip side to that. You may have done something, say, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. It doesn't matter what person say. It doesn't matter what my mom say about. I have had examples before. And go out doing it because they saw somebody else do it and living on someone else's grace. And then the action or the reaction or the consequence is not positive. It is negative.
Yes. And let me just say there that even though the scripture speaks of it in that way, it's both are consequences. So when it says you will reap of the flesh, you will reap corruption if you sow to the flesh, and you will reap eternal life if you sow to the Spirit. Both of these are on two extremes. Both of these are consequences, and one speaks to the negative consequence, and basically a negative action resulting in a negative consequence, and it speaks on the other side of the spectrum, which talks to a positive action leading to a positive consequence. But there are also positive actions leading to negative consequences.
Yes.
And there are also negative actions leading to positive consequences. I remember I kind of joked around with a friend of mine and mentioned basically what I was suggesting is that this friend has a very handsome child, and it was just a joke. And she took it totally wrong. Like maybe she felt like I thought she was probably not so beautiful enough to have such a handsome child, which was not what I was getting at all. And so even though the statement I made was of a positive intent, she took it as so negatively that the consequence for her was a negative consequence. Well, for me as well, it was a negative consequence. She took it totally wrong. And so we see that this is within a spectrum. Whether or not you do something good, that does not necessarily mean that the consequence will always be good. And whether or not you do something bad, that does not mean that the consequence will always be bad.
Very interesting. So we're talking about consequences and consequences of our actions, consequences of what we do. What are consequences, and how do we contribute to good and bad consequences? So I have here, it was very interesting as I read the story, or the account, as I would prefer saying, of Samson. And the Bible talks about Samson in the kind of way he was the strongest man. His strength was in his hair. Yeah, well, not really, but it was a covenant. Yeah, basically that was the covenant, was in his hair, and but he also had this shortcoming of loving women and these kind of things. However, it was his encounter with Delilah that got him to a certain place. Now, as he revealed his secret of his hair and the strength and all of that kind of thing, what did it do? It brought him in a place where he was subdued, so he was without strength. As soon as they cut off his hair, his eyes was plucked off, because he was a destruction of the Philistines. Is it? Yeah. But really, his mandate was really to kill and destroy and do all of those things. So they pluck off his eyes, because if they take out his eyes, he cannot see, he cannot do anything. But what was very interesting is that there was an action that he did, which was he told, maybe just a speech, and it affected his strength.
But that was not even the first action he did. Even wanting Delilah was the first wrong thing that he did. And so you see here that it started off with a negative action. So that was a negative action. And that negative action resulted in, if we go further, the outcome, the final outcome would have been a positive outcome at
Precisely.
the end.
So when we look at it, he was placed in this the building where they were celebrating and doing all of those things. And it is said that his hair grew, he just wanted to touch two poles and all of that. And he killed in his death more persons than in his lifetime. So this is very interesting to see that it began in a way that was not the way it should have gone, according to us, looking at it on the outside. And when you read the outcome of it, what is it saying there? That he actually fulfilled the purpose.
Yes.
So remember, we said we'll be talking about consequences, and I'll add purpose to it. And so we can continue to look and see David, Uriah. He had Uriah's wife, bore a child before this child died, and all of that. And then he went into have Solomon, who became the wisest man. Solomon went on to do a lot of things again, had how many concubines, wives, and all of that thing. Yet to the end, he saw everything, and then he is vanity of vanities. So as we go through what we go through, we start to recognize and see what is taking place. One of the stories that interests me a lot was when I read about Rahab. Rahab. Let me see if I can get it here. It's a very, very interesting thing to read in the book of Joshua chapter 2. And remember, Joshua sent two spies to spy the land, so that they could take over the land that was flowing with those things. So those things actually took place, and Rahab was there. Rahab protected those guys, shielded them. The Bible could even said it in a way, and we could say and argue, did she lie to the king, or did she bend the truth? What happened? What took place? But clearly, Rahab did something that was not in line with the government that she was living with. to save those men.
And when I think about all of this, it is very interesting. We have a tendency to be so judgmental of others. We have that tendency, and when people start off wrong, or if they were to do something wrong, especially within the church, we brand them, as sinner and so on. And we brand them, even though we call ourselves, all of us are sinners, and we all actually deserve death. We say those things, but we are so very judgmental at times that we don't realize that even though, and it's here in scripture as we go through it here, we see it in the case of Solomon, we see it in the case of even Adam and Eve, we see it in those cases. So right there and there, I'm really thinking and saying, okay, it does not mean that if you falter or if you do something wrong, that your purpose is totally eradicated and you have no purpose again, or you are not worthy, or you are such an evil person, you will not prosper in life. That is so not true. And hopefully this is an encouragement to someone who feels that, you know what, I have faltered in this aspect, in this area of my life. I have done something wrong. Maybe in your previous relationship you did not treat your wife well, and so you think, okay, I'm just a terrible person. My father has been doing this and I am following the same pattern. That does not mean that you will continue that way. You have the power to change your circumstance. You have a power to make a decision and to say to yourself, I am not going to go down that path. And like we saw in those instances that you just highlighted, even with Rahab and so on, even though you did something wrong, even though you've come from prison, that does not mean that this is the end of it. That does not mean that you have no purpose. And that does not mean that even though you thought you had a purpose, that this purpose no longer exists and will never be fulfilled. That is totally wrong. And we are not in a position to declare that over your life, because of course we cannot foretell.
I agree. And as I look and as I listen to what you're saying, there is something for us to learn as we speak about consequences. And it is also causing us to do some introspection. So we really need to find out, are we sure about what we are doing? Are we judging? Are we judging too hard? What exactly are we doing? And I look at, because we also mentioned negative, unexpected consequences, and they are the positive. And I look at, like, for example, Judas. And Christ said in the earlier sense, one of you will betray me. And that was real. And I'm thinking, was Judas fully aware and all of those things? And when he did the kiss, Christ said to him, you have betrayed me with a kiss. And it's like he was not fully aware of what would have been the outcome. So you realize that he got paid for this thing and all of that thing. Even when he hanged himself, he threw the money because there's nothing he could do with the money because he didn't see that coming. So that was one of the examples. And when you look at it, the outcome of that had to happen. That was everything that happened was necessary, because it is said that Christ had to die. He had to die to seal this piece of scripture. This scripture that says, for the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Christ our Lord. And the death of him was actually very important. So Judas played the role in doing this. And even while he was unaware of it, it is a reality that had to take place for it to happen. And sometimes we look at Saul again. the children of Israel asked for a king when God was the king, and they said, we need a king like the other nations. And they gave unto, the father gave unto them Saul, who was the most suitable man, yet not the most suitable man, and he was like a thorn in their flesh. And so we start to recognize that they got what they want, but the result was not what they expected.
Right.
And so right now we live in a society where we are quick to say certain things, and sometimes we bless certain things and say this is very wonderful, this will work, this will be this is of divine thing, this is of that, we bless it. And when the consequence, or if it turned out incorrectly, we don't remember we said that.
Right.
So there are some things that we didn't endorse at all, and we'll say this will never work. And then people are undisciplined, people are on this for all kinds of things. And then as time goes by, you realize this is a solid thing. And we now ask the questions, do we have such power? Do we have the ability to foresee as we propose to say that we do? So we have those questions that we could ask.
We have to be very, very careful. Again, there are some consequences that are very natural. It is natural once the conditions remain the same for the outcome to be the same. These are natural consequences. We expect those things to occur, but we are not in a position outside of those things that are just purely natural consequences. We are not in a position to say that this will work and this will not work. Sometimes we analyze wrongly. We say, okay, based on my projections, this is what is going to be. We analyze, and then we find that maybe there was a flaw in our analysis that caused something to go wrong later on. We are all up in our emotions, and so we say, okay, I don't endorse this relationship, or I don't endorse this marriage, and so that will not work out. We are not in that position to make those claims. And later on you realize, okay, that this marriage is working out. These people have gone together and lived a fulfilled life, live a life of purpose. Even then, if in the event we say, okay, this is not going to work out, and we realize that there is some sort of issue within that relationship. Okay, so I said that this was not going to work out. Look at it now. So now they're having difficulty. Now things are not working out. I knew that this was going to happen. I already knew. This does not mean anything. It means absolutely nothing. We do not have the power, and it is not because we foretold this, or we had said this in the past, that this is why the situation is what it is presently. There could be so many things, and again, we do not know the end. We never know the end. Like we saw with Rahab. Rahab was not an upstanding woman, so to speak, but then even within her wrongs, even within her negativity, we see that there was something great that happened that caused the people of Israel to be to win at the end of the day. So we cannot claim, or we have no place to dictate what somebody's life will be, or to state that this is what is it. This is what because we did not approve of something, this is why we are not God. We are not the ultimate, and we ought not to even rejoice. In fact, we should be on the alert and think, okay, this person experiencing this, let me examine myself and try to position myself so that I don't experience the same. We have to be so very careful.
Yes, I really appreciate what you just said there. And I'm saying, if you're coming in, we are talking right now about consequences. We are also mellowing down. But here's one of the things that I want to add and say to that. the important thing, or one of the things that I realize with us as humanity, for some reason we love to rejoice when we seem to see downfalls, right? Or we say things like, I knew that was coming, I saw this, I saw that. And we say it with a sense of arrogance and pride, like to show I knew that, I saw the downfall. For example, or let me phrase it differently. If I were to say something that I see come to pass, like you rightfully said, my way of looking at that should be so sovereign, is that, wow, I should be even afraid that what I said came to pass, and especially if it's negative, to now speak in a way to be a blessing and to encourage and to guide and mold someone else and say, listen, I think this would be an option where you could help yourself be redeemed and all of that. So that type of thing. So this is my thing. I'm saying that we tend to rejoice a lot. Earlier I was listening to a friend of mine, just about 2 hours right before we're preparing for this, via Zoom over in Staten Island. And he was that experience of Elijah. And Elijah was in the wilderness, and the brook dried up where he was getting water to drink. And then he's saying he would propose a few questions. And one of the questions that he was proposing is like, did he sin? What did Elijah do that this came as a punishment? That was his only source of water, but it got dried up. And what was God doing to him? Was God punishing him for something? And then right away he brought that to reality, and he's saying this is what many of us love to do. As soon as we see the circumstance of someone change, oh, this person has done that, they must have gotten that the wrong way, they must have done something that is why they lose their house. And not realizing maybe God is preparing something different for them, organizing a different uprising for them. And so we have this mentality that once something goes wrong with someone, the outcome is negative, and it is because they did something wrong. And he went on further to say that as Elijah moved on, he went to meet this woman, the widow, and she had just that little handful of flour and a little bit of oil and her son, and they were going to just eat it and die. And God instructed him as to what to do, and she said, I will make the cake for him. He said, make the cake for me first, and all of that type of thing. And then again, as we're talking about action, consequences, purpose. His purpose was to go there. She did not disobey what he said. She did it, and what? She had stuff for the entire time of famine that was going on in the land. If this lady was there filling things up to now, it would be pouring. You understand? But she must have run out of oil, of jars and all those type of things. So the encouragement, as I sit and as we speak about consequences, really we are saying to each and every one of ourselves that we should be careful in how we view situations. We recognize that we may put ourselves in positions to make bad choices, make bad decisions that could land us into bad places, that could even cause death. I don't even want to give examples of things like that, but these are some of the realities that exist. We could place ourselves in situations like that. However, some of us could just be riding with a genuine friend, and because we're coming from work a little late, we have no ride, and to our surprise, the cops stop us, and when you know it, we all are in prison. And then it said, oh, but it's been a long time Shem is involved in that thing. We just didn't know. Look at the person we found him with. And to your surprise, what do you know? This guy maybe just my friend that we went to school long time, and he maybe is even expressing to the officers, listen, this guy is innocent in that. I don't want him involved in that. But no one is, hey, no one is listening to that. They just look at how you are and they want to bring you into that. So we need to be careful, because we could find ourselves in circumstances and situations that we never planned to be in. We are there, the wrong place at the wrong time. I will not say the right time, at the wrong time, and it will land us in a negative thing. But if it happens positively, you gladly say it's the right place at the right time. So, people, we have it here. Today we have been speaking about consequences.
Right.
Consequences. What is consequence? And let's speak about consequence again. What is your meaning for consequence, so that we could get it across, so that persons could understand what is consequence.
Let me go
your
back.
Meaning of consequence.
Let me go back to read what I said. Yes, so it is consequence. We established that consequence is a very neutral term, and this means it is neither good nor bad. So you generally, when people speak of consequence, it has that negative connotation. The consequence, it just means that it is bad. Mm-hmm. But we're establishing that consequence is a very neutral term. It can be good, it can be bad. And we're saying that in life, everything we do, every action taken has an equal reaction. And the reaction or the response to an action is what a consequence is. So that is basically what consequence is all about. It is a response to an action, or a reaction to an action.
Alright, so beautiful. We have it there, consequences. And earlier we said we look at it from a functionalist perspective, and guys like Durkheim proposed that crime and different things like that, it is part of our society and it's beneficial. Does that mean that crime and bad things, which are consequences of certain actions, are beneficial to our society? Let me explain and let me say why it is. It is said that if there is crime, it helps redefine the society. It makes you aware that there is a value system that you go by. So if you live in a place where there is no crime, so it seems, any mild alteration is seen as a serious crime. Because what the system or society teaches is that they want everyone to have this perfect way of life. So you must live like me, I must live like you. This is what we all want, order. Yes. And so he's saying that this is almost impossible, and this is not how the society works. But as soon as one breaks the rule, it helps redefine it, and it helps create rules and governing laws as well. So our actions bring forth a consequence, or it brings forth a reaction. So we are stating that consequences are part of what we go through daily. And what we really want to end and speak about and say, that let us do some introspection and let's look into ourselves. Let us not be the one to keep proposing negative things, or to rejoice in the negative outcomes and be reminding persons of I told you so and I told you. But let's be that person that will be the encouraging person in a situation where even when we would have predicted that there would have been a negative outcome, we could go and help restore and said, I saw this, I was hoping that this would not have been the outcome, but let's just see how we could move on from there and help that person. Hold each other's hand, let's be each other's brothers, keeper, and lead each and everyone in the way of righteousness. So this has been an episode of Music Mind. And yes, Soraya is saying in there, it can be good or bad, but people associate it more with bad reaction to an action. And that is very true. Persons are definitely associating it with negativity, and then we understand why. We understand why. And the Bible is very strong in how it places it, because consequences with the Bible is called wages of, like for example, the wages of sin is death. And the Bible speaks about it very dreadful, and it speaks so that we could remain on track. So this has been mine where we spoke about consequences. Consequences of our action, consequences of the lack of action, and if I should say, we have parenting styles that lack actions, and it just bring about a consequence. So no correction, no guidance, no. You understand? Everything that we do brings about a reaction, which is a consequence. And so we must try as much as possible to be that person, or be a positive influence to create positive consequence.
Yeah, so be encouraged. For those of you who might have started off with a wrong or maybe a bad action, be encouraged that this is not the end. It does not mean that you're going to suffer negative consequences your entire life. That certainly is not the case at all. And try to be conscious of your actions, because it does not mean that, some people feel they're so holy, they're so righteous, they're so up there, they're so good, they're well clad, that, their actions will never amount to something negative. I gave the example of my friend who took what I said totally wrong. And again, it's a reflection too of where you are at as an individual. And we ought not to take offense when people take offense, if you understand what I'm saying. Because sometimes the individual takes things in a particular way simply because of where he or she is at. Okay, so be mindful that whether or not you feel that you're doing something wrong, or if you feel that you are good and you're doing good things, that does not exempt you from a negative consequence. Sometimes the bad just comes looking for you. You don't go in search of it. And so we have to be very careful what we do, and also be mindful that we are not all perfect beings, and situations don't just align itself with us as we may want it to. It will align itself however it wants. We are not in charge of ourselves, and everything is so connected that maybe had happened eons ago would influence a consequence that is of a consequence of an action in just a few minutes. So we just never know. So be encouraged. For those of you who have taken a wrong path or feel that you did something wrong or negative, be encouraged that this is not the end. Your purpose will be fulfilled. It can be fulfilled. You have the power to change that. You have the power to align yourself where you're supposed to be, to ensure something good comes out of it. And again, remember that even though you started off wrong, that does not mean that you are going to finish off wrong. Sometimes that is the testimony. Sometimes that is where you live out the strongest and the most victorious.
Definitely. So we just want to say thanks to SF Rose for being here. One Drop Soraya, Siraya Lafayette. Wow. Syria Lafayette. Yes. Thanks for being here. Angela M, D. Meluce, Catherine Alexander. We're happy that you are here, and even those of you who did not speak in the chat, we thank you for being here. I just want to take some time to just speak about this event that is taking place December 13th. Alexander Family Foundation, presents a gospel telethon. December 13th, look out for it. This is going to be streaming live, and all the proceeds really go to the less fortunate. So these are the kinds of things that we need to support, especially in this time. We have children who are actually in suffering. Their parents are suffering. And in this time especially, where it has heightened because you have some persons who were doing well, they lose their job, just far as the persons who never had before. So this event basically is for that, but this is the 13th, and so you'll get more details as I keep posting things about it. So don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell notification button so you could know when we are on or when we'll be on. New music, new stuff will be out. So it was a pleasure today as we spoke about consequence. Thank you, SF Rose. We might definitely check you out later. Drop by and see what's going on. So it was a pleasure having you. This is another episode of Muziq Mind. D Meluce, yes, thanks for coming. And yes, one drop again. I know you're in a different time zone, so a pleasure having you, and it was a blessing.
Well, certainly always a pleasure to be in conversation with you and with everyone who will be listening later on. Thank you so much for your continued support, and we hope that this episode has brought some enlightenment to you and some encouragement to you in one way or another. And this has been an episode of Muziq Mind. Until next time, remember we are on every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Caribbean Time or 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The time has changed in the US, in some parts of the US. So yes, and so feel free to join us, and feel free if you have any topic that you would like for us to engage. We are open and willing to engage any topic that you suggest. Yes, again, we don't propose that we know it all, but we always open to discuss topics, especially topics that are not always in the forefront when it comes to spiritual discourse. We always try to bring a spiritual twist to it and show that everything social is very intertwined with everything spiritual. We cannot separate the two. In fact, spirituality is one of the greatest social issues that we face as a human society. So thank you once again for joining us, and we hope to hear from you, or we hope to see you next time. Till next time, have a blessed one.
All right, look out for another great topic next weekend. It was a pleasure. Blessings.